Thank you so much. You touch my heart with such a beautiful award, which will find a place in our home in Cleveland, in suburban Cleveland, in Shaker Heights, where my wife Marguerite and I have long resided. My wife Marguerite is with us today. And to Dr. Lester Lefton and to Al Fitzpatrick and Alfreda Brown and student MC Jeanette Reyes and to Dr. Stanley Weirden and all who are involved in the program, I thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. I've got my colleagues here with me, and if I would like them to stand because without them, there is no Leon Bibb on the air. Our general manager, Sam Rosenwasser, is here. And Jill Manuel, our news director, is over there. And Lee Jordan, the co-anchor with whom I work on 6 o'clock news this evening, is with us. And Jim Scott, our managing editor. If you'd all stand, because I want them to see really where. Thank you so much for being with us today. Dr. Lester Lefton, I'm not going to speak long. They told me I could speak in about 6 minutes or so, which is difficult for a man who's used to a half-hour or an hour newscast. I will not be that long, I guarantee you. But Dr. Lester Lefton and I were talking about financing of the university. I went to Bowling Green State University. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I went to Bowling Green State University. But many years after that, I was a member of the Board of Trustees of the university from 1996 to 2005. And we were wrestling with budget cuts and things like that and dealing with all the kinds of things that we are still dealing with. So I hope that we will, in this state, will find a way to carve out more money for higher education, because certainly it is so vital to what we do. And I really appreciate the comments of Dr. Lester Lefton as he and I were sat next to each other having lunch this afternoon. Thank you so much for this award. Let me take you back just a handful of years as we talk about diversity, as we talk about journalism. But I will tell you, years back, a big truck pulled up outside our home, and the delivery men lifted the box in that truck. They lifted it out, and that box held an array of wires and tubes. And the big men muscled that into our living room, running a wire from the box all the way to the roof of our house. And I was just a young lad. Around our chimney, they fastened a metal antenna, which would grab pictures as they flashed by, traveling at the speed of light from television transmitters in our community. However, the reach of the moving pictures and sound would come from around the world. That box with its television screen would become a window to my young world. For my family, which daily and nightly gathered around it, television would provide us with entertainment and news. It was a black and white television. For the youngsters in here, before color, there was black and white only. It was a black and white television, and what poured out of the screen were moving pictures in black and white and shades of gray. In those days of my early youth, most of what we saw on television, however, in reality, was white. Black people and brown and red and yellow people were in short supply. Women were in short supply, certainly during the day's news. Still, the pictures grabbed me and my young eyes, and so did the baritone voices of the television announcers, who had rhythms in their voices which rose and fell like music. They'd say things like, "Tonight's broadcast is brought to you by the good people at Chesterfield Cigarettes. Chesterfield, one fine smoke. You can also buy it in the new king size. Same great tobaccos, now with a 21% longer smoke." Or tonight's sports is brought to you by the good people at Blatt's Beer. Blatt's Beer, one fine beer in bottles, kegs, and cans. Now with sports, here's Jim. Their voices were magic for me. The announcers and newscasters and performers all pulled me into that box of wires and tubes with reports from nearby and far reaches of the world, but also offered were drama and songs and dances and comedy and much more. Because there was so little diversity on television during my youth, when a black performer or someone speaking words of wisdom appeared on the screen, my parents would telephone relatives around the neighborhood to announce that one of us is on television tonight. It was something to see Sammy Davis Jr. or Ella Fitzgerald or Nat or the Step Brothers or Marian Anderson appear on network variety shows. During the Civil Rights Movement, the face of Dr. Martin Luther King was brought to my window to the world. The movement needed its story told. Television focused its cameras on a changing world as America dealt with its issues. Both it and the rest of the world watched what we were about here in the United States. So much of that civil rights movement, both in and away from Cleveland, I saw through the screen of our living room television. In my memory right now, I see unfolding moments, many of them which helped form me. Most of the pictures I recall in my youth were in black and white and shades of gray. Dr. King's picture in my memory is mostly black and white and in shades of gray. The marches, the protests, the changing times, they're all there, unrolled on ribbons of film or videotape for television. Though there were few, if any, black journalists working for the news organizations, still I was bitten by the bug of journalism, which calls me. Radio plays its part as well. I lay in my back bedroom in my home on Parkgate Avenue in Cleveland's East Side with a little wire running from a pocket-sized transistor radio, as we called it, into my ear. I turned that radio dial in the middle of the night, bringing in the voices of the newsmakers and the announcers and the newscasters from around the country on the 50,000-watt radio stations I could hear. This is WNBC, broadcasting from Rockefeller Center, New York City. This is KMOX, St. Louis. You're listening to WGN, Chicago. This is WERE, We're Cleveland, and this is the news. You're listening to the American Broadcasting Company. And one of my favorites, that announcer who would simply say, "This is CBS." My sixth grade teacher, Robert Taylor, encouraged me to follow the idea of journalism. He is the first to mention the word journalism to me in the sixth grade. 6 years later, I entered Bowling Green State University, majoring in journalism. I am the second of 2 black journalism majors on campus at that time. After nearly 3 years of study as required by the university for graduation, after my 3rd year, I have to have an internship following my junior year in journalism. My professor feels I can get a job. He says, "I'll call my good friend," says the professor. "He always takes my recommendations for students to work one summer. I guarantee you, Leon, you'll have a job." But something strange happened on the way to summer internship after my junior year. Yes, I did get the job with the help of my professor, advisor, talking about my qualifications, my studies in journalism, talking about my character. The job comes over the telephone as I listen to the professor and his friend in Ohio, somewhere else in Ohio, discuss me on the phone. I am sitting in the room with the professor as he's talking about me. I am thrilled with the prospect of internship. "That's great. Leon will be glad to hear it," says my professor advisor. Sometimes bad news can come quickly. It did that day. It did that hour. When the employer found out I was black, the job disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. My professor debated with the employer, but his friend was adamant. "It wouldn't work," said the friend. "We don't hire black people." What losses America has suffered and still suffers because of closed-minded people. So that day, I was alone, an entire world around me, but I feel that I stand alone. At the time, there are 125 black students on campus. Marguerite and I are among those 125. There are 9,000 students total on the campus of Bowling Green State University. No black professors on campus. No black staff to speak of. There's nowhere I can turn. I am 20 years old, and I'm learning about the underside of life. However, eventually I work out my own job without anybody's help, and I call the Cleveland Call-and-Post newspaper in Cleveland, which serves the black community, a weekly newspaper, and with it, I get a job for that summer. I'm 20 years old, in the late 60s, and I get the credits I need for graduation. 1 year after that, after graduation, 1 year after the call-in post, on the day of graduation, I find out I have a job. I have 3 job offers. One of them is with the Cleveland Plain Dealer as a general assignment reporter. And it's at the Plain Dealer I meet Bob Magruder. Robert Magruder, for whom this award is named, and his lovely wife Annette sitting with us, his widow Annette. At age 21, unheard of, I am a professional journalist, green as, I guess, my St. Patrick's Day tie. But I'm working on the 13th largest paper in the nation. There was something special about Bob Magruder. He was determined to get the story. That was the journalist drive in him. But there was something else. There was an obvious awareness in him. He helped me understand that he and I often had to chart our own courses, to open the doors for others to follow. We would have to work hard for ourselves and for anyone who would follow. And he told us, he told me, you cannot fail. They are watching us closely. We must be good at what we do. And that was the clarion call. Bob Magruder's image is still emblazoned in my brain. The Plain Dealer found that diversity made it better. Magruder helped make the newspaper even stronger than it was before. I like to think that I helped too. Then came the military draft. I was brought into the U.S. Army. I ended up in Vietnam. A couple of years later, after Vietnam, after serving there, I enrolled in graduate school at Bowling Green State University again, this time to major in radio and television and film, and I faced my first television camera. 2 years after that, I faced my first commercial television camera at WTOL in Toledo. The push for diversity helped open doors for me. Through a diversity attitude, companies profit by bringing people from various walks of life. Each one of us, regardless of our ethnicity, brings a gift, brings a talent. People come in both genders, all colors, all backgrounds, all sexual preferences, all religions, and all abilities, and they bring something to us, and we must keep that in mind. For centuries, the doors were not always open. I think of my forefathers. I think of my father and my mother, and the deep interest that my father had in radio when he was just a young boy. But there was no microphone for my father, no chance of opportunity. But times change. Now with my notebook in my hand, pencil in my hand, with a computer keyboard at my fingertips, with a camera and a photographer like my good friend Joe McGee back there who's photographing this from Channel 5, with my own camera on my own shoulder, that's part of it too now, I am covering the news and what I hope are my talents and my perspectives I bring. The door has remained wide open. In this profession for me, there have been moments of laughter and obviously times of tears. Still, I could not think of another profession that I would rather go in than this wonderful one of journalism. But I am still that little boy in the bed, in the back room, listening to the broadcast signals coming from far away. Signals are traveling at the speed of light. Were those signals strong enough to leave our atmosphere and go into the vastness of space? If they are strong enough, they could reach our nearest neighbor, the star Vega, 27 light years away. It is there, if there are beings with the equipment, with the ability and the desire, they could tune us in were they on our frequency, and if those signals were strong enough. If they've already tuned us in, 27 years after Milton Berle first said his words on television, they have seen Milton Berle. Or Merles see it now. They've already seen Dragnet with Jack Webb. By now, they are viewing bits of The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, or early episodes of MASH, or The Carol Burnett Show. It takes 27 years for the signals to reach them, if indeed the signals are strong enough, and if indeed there are beings there to tune us in. Somewhere in all of that broadcast traffic, traveling at the speed of light, there are images of us. So on this broadcast day, at the speed of light, bound for Vega, we must send a message. To those who share this corner of space with us, know this signal comes from a planet of salted oceans and green mantles inhabited by nearly 7 billion individuals, 3 billion families. All of us individual, all of us diverse, each one of us diverse, all of us the same because we all breathe the same atmosphere. We would tell the people of Vega, what you're receiving on your screens is the way we were, because it takes 27 years for our signals to reach you. So I would tell the people of Vega, I must send a postscript rather. I must send a PS. We are working to be more inclusive of the diverse peoples who inhabit this place we call Earth. We who are gatherers of the news on our planet ask that you ponder the images and voices you will see and hear. But do not judge us fully yet, for we are on the road to increased diversity. Do not judge us yet. Those of you who see our signals, obviously there is more to come. I thank you so much for such a warm welcome. I thank you so much for such a wonderful display here, such a wonderful award. I thank you so much for even mentioning me in the name with Bob Magruder. We thank you. Marguerite and I love you all. We love you madly. And we'll see you probably on the news later on today, God willing. That's the plan. Thank you so much.